Hey, Aisha, let's see her video question.
My name is Aisha Queen Tefera, and I'm from Virginia, and my business name is Ultimate Care.
How many team members do you have?
80 plus.
What's your top line revenue?
Revenue wise, about 6 mil. I struggle with too much humility. I'm a very humble person. I don't want to be out there. How do you balance that, to be able to be out there, but at the same time maintain humility?
Well, you can maintain humility and still be very confident. C.S. Lewis said it well. He said, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's being other-centered rather than self-centered. Arrogance is what you want to avoid. But you can be very powerful and be other-centered. You can be very out there and be other-centered. You've not lost humility at that point. Humility does not require one to be a shrinking flower that hides behind, some veil or something. That's not humility. That's just lacking in confidence. And that's false humility if you're doing it to try to appear humble. But again, C.S. Lewis's definition is the ultimate definition as far as I'm concerned. It's just being other-centered rather than self-centered. And that is humble. And so I meet people that are very confident, very courageous, very out there, but are very humble because they're other-centered. I'll tell you one place I run into them pretty regularly. We do a lot of work with the military. We have Financial Peace University has been taught on military bases all over the world. And there are exceptions, but most of the time that I run into top brass, a colonel, two-star general, somebody that's top brass that's been doing military a long time, they will catch you off guard because they're so unassuming. They're not impressed with themselves. They're not impressed with the medal on their shoulder or on their chest. And they're there for their men and for their women. They're there for their soldiers. We see that because we're on base. We're brought on base to speak to and help their men and women by them. They bring us there to serve them. They're servant leaders in that regard. But they're not all pomp and circumstance. They're not all narcissistic and throwing themselves around out there in front of you. They're the opposite of a politician in that regard. But there's no question who's in charge. There's no lack of strength. There's no lack of courage. And they are willing to put themselves out there. They'll put on their full dress uniform and walk right up to a podium and do what it takes to lead from that level. And that is not lacking in humility. Now, again, occasionally you run into one. In military, people will tell you that there's an occasional officer that is not what I'm describing. That in other words, they're a twerp. But humility is just saying, I'm going to use everything that God gave me, the position, the power, the money, for the good of others. And that's why I'm here. I'm other-centered rather than self-centered. And I can even be boisterous about that. Now, I got a feeling Aisha is going to be sweet and kind and nice no matter what she does, just because that's who she is. You can just tell from the video, right? And be a little different than if I'm doing it. But that's okay. That's okay. You can have different personality styles. Personality style, though, humility is not a personality style. It's a character quality. And so you can have that regardless of your style. Some people are quieter, calmer. Some are more loud, more gregarious. That's not humility. One's not humble, one's not. It's other-centered versus self-centered. Humility, again, is not thinking less of one's self. It is thinking of yourself less. That's all it is. Very simple. And you can do that and be a leader, and you need to do that and be a leader, because leaders should be My friend John Maxwell says it all the time. They should be servants. You ought to be a servant leader. You're there to serve. That's the whole idea. Good stuff. That's a great question. Thank you. This is the EntreLeadership Podcast.